Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. Today, we're waking up with watches and everything is for sale. Email me directly, tmosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing. We buy what we sell what we buy, and we are always looking to build inventory. Sell us one watch, sell us an entire collection. We pay cash, we pay fast, we walk you through the process, make it a no-brainer, no upper limit on value paid. We will buy your entire collection outright. We can also do trades, a watch you're not wearing or several you're not wearing for one you will love. To buy, trade, or sell, reach out to me. I am tmosso at thewatchbox.com. We will be getting a new card for the title. But for now, the focus is on the watches, and today we start with the timepiece launched in steel, 250 pieces for the 2023 model year. This is the Zenith Chronomaster Sport Aaron Rodgers limited edition. 250 pieces. You can see it's New York Jets green and white. And while the first year of Rodgers at the Jets didn't end like they had hoped due to injury, the watch itself actually evolves the Chronomaster Sport away from its Rolex Daytona-like origins from 2021. This feels much more like Zenith's own watch. So 41 millimeters in steel, you can see you've got this green ceramic bezel that's used for reading fractional seconds. The idea here being that while the El Primero has always been able to resolve 1/10 of a second, tiny scales make it difficult to actually distinguish that kind of margin. So here you can see it's been 2 seconds. That's 2.5, 2.6, 2.7. So I can easily distinguish tenths of a second and finally take advantage of that 36,000 vibration per hour, 10 beat per second rate. Now it's also a Tourbillon as it circles the dial in lightning fashion every 10 seconds. Scratch resistant. It's a nice gloss green that matches the green lacquer of the dial well. It's rarely that a ceramic bezel and a dial color match so perfectly. We have these radially arrayed applique Arabic numerals, and the watch is quite well loomed. We'll do a loom shot now and give you a sense of it. Easy to see, no problems whatsoever. Grayscale fade from silver to gray to anthracite on the overlapping registers. Note that we don't have a chrono hours. We have chrono tenths of seconds, chrono seconds up to 60, and then chrono minutes up to 60, but we don't have the hours. We lose that with the striking tenth system. Now, traditionally, El Primeros did not have hacking seconds, but this is the El Primero 2, the 3600 caliber, so we do have hacking, and we do have a very quick set. We still use a column wheel and a lateral clutch, so the crispness is unquestioned. Flipping everything over, you can see the watch has a Chronomaster distinctive case. This is where the watch is least like the Rolex. This is quite clearly Zenith's own case, hammered home by the Zenith Star logo and pump-style pushers you won't find on any modern Rolex Daytona chronograph. Now on the back, you can see 12, a little bit ironic. That's Aaron Rodgers' original number with his previous team. With the Jets, he wore 8 because 12 on the Jets is Joe Namath. Broadway Joe said that Aaron Rodgers could use 12, but Aaron, out of respect, opted for 8. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a Long Islander. I know these things. So automatic winding, it's got a longer power reserve than the original El Primero. That was 50. This is 60. Still column wheel, lateral clutch, 5 beats, or I should say 5 hertz, 10 beats per second. You can see the lateral clutch right under the rotor. And of course, everything here is grayscale with the exception of a few blued metal pieces that really pop quite nicely. Big watch, but not huge. If you include the end links of the bracelet, it's 51 millimeters from lug to lug and 13.9 millimeters thick. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, it wears really easily. It will fit underneath the cuff, and I really think the best is yet to come with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. But even if it were to end today, this watch was a worthwhile entry in the canon of the El Primero, a fantastic looking piece, and I would say, all things considered, this is the most distinctly Zenith version of the Chronomaster Sport yet. I don't read Rolex from any part of this watch, and it allows the movement, which has always been Zenith's hallmark, to really shine. Now, jumping into something that shines, we've got this spectacular 2022 launch from Moser Cie. Actually, you couldn't have more contrast. The case is brilliant rose gold. The dial is Vanta black, a carbon nanotube material, the least reflective surface known to exist. Absorbs 99.965% of all light. The only reflection you see is on the sapphire above the dial base. Now, Moser realized traditionally it wasn't possible to print or place applique on Vanta black to create indices. So what they did was they hollowed it out and put a gold disc underneath the Vanta Black. So what you're actually looking at is a Vanta Black stencil over a gold base, which is how we can have all these individual indices. Now, Globalite ceramic lume is used for the hands. The watch has a screw-down crown. It's 120 meters water resistant. And then we've got a wonderfully compact 40 millimeter case size. It is physically massive, and you never forget that. But ergonomically, it's a treat. You can see how far inboard the edge of my wrist the lugs are. You can easily wear this watch on a wrist of 14 centimeters, and being well under 13 millimeters thick, it's super flat and slides under a cuff. It has the feeling of solidity you expect on something like a Rose Gold 5990 or Royal Oak Offshore Brick. Really appealing. If you like a heavy luxury watch, this is for you. Now, getting closer, you can see there's something almost organic about the interlock of the links on the Moser bracelet, with polished recesses and contrasting finish, a handsome taper and case integration. It is beautiful. And again, it almost seems like something you would find in the state of nature on a segmented sea creature. This is truly awesome stuff. You can see the bevel down the sides, the recesses of the case, the lapping machine-like radial grain on the bezel. This watch draws on the imagery of 1970s sports watches without plagiarizing the way so many Gerald Genta knockoffs do. This really owes nothing to Genta. It's very much its own watch. The tourbillon, a flying tourbillon and a 1-minute tourbillon, 21,600 vibrations per hour. It is the best finished part of the movement, and that's good because you get to see it up front. It's a flying tourbillon because there's no upper bridge to block your view. And if you look, you have 2 stud holders. It is free sprung and very durable, but that's not really the point. The 2 hairsprings being physically identical and 180 degrees out of phase, gravity will act in an equal and opposite fashion on these hairsprings. So one will cause the balance to slow, the other will cause it to speed up by an equal and opposite margin, evening out the effect of gravity in any position instantaneously, making a tourbillon actually practical for a wristwatch. On the reverse, we have a HMC 800 series movement, and it is automatic winding with a 3-day power reserve and a magic lever winding system. That is the HMC 804. I'll try to show you a little bit more. You can note the rose gold rotor, which has not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 different finishes. We have the barrel arbor in a golden chaton cup fixed by black polished screws. You can see these double-crested coaches nav across the bridges, and at the underside of the tourbillon, as with the rotor, mounted on unlubricated ultra-high efficiency ceramic ball bearings. And a very attractive watch. Again, magic lever style, bidirectional winding, 3 days of power reserve, 120 meters of water resistance, impressive wrist feel, robust construction, and original design. There is a lot to recommend this watch. Okay, let's start with the lume shot and then bring the light back. Can you tell? I think just from the hands and the font of the numerals, you probably can. But did you know it's the earliest version of the FP Journe Octa Sport? The model made from 2012 to 2014, all aluminum, under 60 grams, and that's with every single link in the bracelet. That is toy-like. It's basically 2 ounces for those of you in the old colonies like myself. So aluminum case, dial, movement, bracelet, clasp, and you can see it features the discontinued rubber bumpers, which add both durability and a much-needed tonal contrast. The dial is aluminum, though matted and darkened, and the numerals are actually solid blocks of luminova rather than printed features. We have a power reserve indicator. It'll run for 160 hours, though best timekeeping is 120, which is why Journe declares 120 for these. We have a little feature of the dial called the bean, affectionately by collectors, and it marks the transition from day to night and back. It is an AM PM indicator, so you can see right at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., it's starting to turn red. Red means night. Then we have a little matte finished media blasted bezel for a smoked sapphire that acts as constant seconds, and we've got a quick set system for a grand dot up at the top that uses flush rather than superimposed discs. And you can see that the numeral font for the 9 and the numeral on the dial, it's the same 9. Attention to detail matters. On the reverse side, you can see that caliber 1300 has been heavily revised. Now the bridges and plates are all aluminum. We have this techno-industrial look, still same technical capabilities, free sprung, 3 Hz beat rate, 5 position adjustment, and then we've got this Line Sport exclusive rotor that looks way more machine age and industrial in its aesthetic than for example, the rose gold Clou de Paris on the standard dress watch version of this caliber. It is freakishly light. When you put it on the wrist, you can't forget how light it is, although you might forget you're wearing it. You'll actually shoot panicked glances at your wrist to see whether it's still there. Now, it's about 48 millimeters, 48.5 from link to link, so the total distance across the wrist is just over 48. It is very thin in profile, and while nominally 42 millimeters, it wears more like a 40. So the rare integrated bracelet sports watch that actually wears smaller than its rated size. If you want an integrated bracelet sports watch, though, sometimes you just can't beat the originals, and the Nautilus is one of them. 2006 brought us the 5980, the first Nautilus chronograph, which also included the first Patek Philippe automatic in-house chronograph caliber. Well, this model came out in 2010. It is the 5980 1A-014. The difference was this sort of gray gradient fade dial. So you've got the mono counter with superimposed chrono hours and also minutes. You've got the gradient fade of the dial, white gold hands, white gold indices. We'll do a quick loom shot so you can see how it glows in the dark. It glows pretty well. And then we've got 120 meters of water resistance, and a feature that's not well advertised on these 28520 chronographs, which is the flyback capability. So reset and restart without first stopping. It's great for timing events that occur in rapid succession. The finishing of the case, the complexity of the case, its contours, its contrast, and the bracelet attached account for the price differential between a Nautilus and an Aquanaut. The Nautilus is far more complex to assemble, finish, and complete, and that largely accounts for its senior status, not just its age, but its complexity and the demands of its fabrication. That really accounts for its permanent seniority over the Aquanaut in the Patek catalog. On the back, you can see the movement, column wheel, vertical clutch, automatic winding, 55-hour power reserve, free sprung, 5-position adjustment, Gyromax free sprung balance with an anti-magnetic Spiromax silicone hairspring. Throwing it on my wrist, you might be surprised by how compact it is. First, it's 40.5 millimeters, and it's only 12.5 millimeters thick with a bit of a dished case back, or I should say a bulbous case back there. It's inset. It actually sinks lower than 12.5 on the wrist, and then the case flank is sloped, so it'll slide easily under a cuff. Really easy to wear. I could recommend this watch for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference. Very comfortable and nicely counterweighted by the beautifully finished and substantial bracelet and clasp combination. Sticking with bracelets, but in a completely different direction, we're going to talk about the Breguet 3130BA. Now, the 3130 was launched in 1983 at the heart of an era dominated by Daniel Roth's stewardship of the Chaumet-owned Breguet brand. Breguet was bought by the Chaumet brothers, French jewelers, in 1970. In 1976, Audemars Piguet and Jaeger-LeCoultre veteran Daniel Roth, we all call him Daniel Roth, was brought in to design and fabricate the watches. Louis-Moser Cie joined him, and for the next decade, they created what would become the modern design language of Breguet wristwatches. And the 3130, along with the 3330, one of the real foundational pieces. So this uses a Piguet P71 movement, doing business as the Breguet 502. It's a 3.2 millimeter thick, ultra-thin, 3/4 rotor automatic. And then the dial of the watch is based on Breguet Pocket Watch number 5, and a big difference being that we have a date here instead of the original watch's small seconds, but the dial is made of solid gold cut with multiple patterns on a rose lathe. The hands are fired steel, power reserve indicator, moon phase, date. This one features a rare integrated bracelet. These are almost unheard of. And this watch is peak 80s luxury, 36.3 millimeters in diameter, and thanks to a solid case back, only 7.5 millimeters thick. Now, it's about 51 millimeters end-link to end-link, including the bracelet, so it has a lot of wrist presence for a 36. The bracelet is beautifully made, and unlike so many 80s bracelets, this one is neither ropey with too much play, nor worn out from years of use. It's as clean and sharp and solid as the day it left Le Sentier. You could see that the end link matches the coining profile of the case, and these are truly handmade watches. The dial, yes, solid gold, silvered, and guilloche, and then the case cold rolled to create the coining, then finished in a jig. The lugs welded on artisanally with evidence of the gathered weld removed. A super massive bracelet with an unusual type of clamshell lock. So unlike most dress watch bracelets, it is not friction fit. It's actually held down by a clamshell. On the wrist, again, I mentioned it's not a big watch, but with a 51 millimeter lug-to-lug span or link-to-link span, it does have presence. This is more a Daniel Roth watch than the new Souscription Tourbillon from the revived Daniel Roth brand. He had nothing to do with the new watch. He had everything to do with this. So if you want Daniel Roth in your collection, this is the real deal, and in uncommonly well-preserved full bracelet form. Okay, I've got two from de Bethune, starting with something that is a little bit unconventional from them because it's a water-resistant sports watch. This is the DB28 Grand Sport, 44 millimeters in diameter in grade 5 titanium. It launched in 2015, screw-down crown, 105-meter water resistance. It still has the 6-day power reserve, a little hidden blue power reserve indicator over the second barrel and the ratchet wheel, and then 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs for the patented evacuated silicon white gold rim balance wheel. So how many patents are we looking at here? Well, first, there's the variable geometry floating lugs that will conform to your size. Second, twin self-adjusting barrels. They cannot accidentally be overwound, and they give 6 days of power reserve. We have the 1, 2, 3 shock protection spring system. That's called triple parachute, which improves both durability and the accuracy of the watch. I'm going to move the hour hand out of the way so you can more easily see that feature. Also patented the dogleg kink profile of a flat hairspring that breathes like an overcoil. And so we've also got a silicon escape wheel of de Bethune's own design. And then we've got Microlight, a reductive lathe-turned type of guilloche that includes small, fine striations that give definition and sharpness and artisanal value without something that would seem out of place like a Breguet-style rosette. You can see that the metallic blueprinted track for the time overhangs the dial, adding to the focal planes, and there are many different focal planes here. We have media-blasted, polished, and fired blue titanium hands. You can see that the shock protection springs, the bridge for them, and the balance bridge fully black polished and then beveled on the edges. You'll also appreciate that we have micro beveling on the ratchet wheel. It's a little harder to see, but it's there. On the reverse side, you can see nautical pennants. This watch, 105 meters, 300 feet, water resistant. And then the strap, a factory integrated rubber strap with a pin buckle for easy adjustability, designed to make the watch highly wearable. Also, you'll note the use of a mirror under the balance to reflect more light onto the structure. Look at the black polishing of the cap of the barrel bridge and the anchor for the spring system. All of that mirror finished, one of the largest mirror finished components you'll find on a luxury watch. Now on my wrist, wears quite nicely. It's not as big as you'd think. It's fairly thin. It's only about 13 millimeters thick, and though it is a 44, being all sapphire and titanium with a rubber strap, it's also very light. Oversized is the look here, and you can see this is almost fitting underneath my cuff. So if you want a fun haute de gamme, truly unique and innovative watch for summer, skip the RM. Most of those can't get wet anyway. This thing is designed to get wet and wild as you like. In fact, my company owns de Bethune, and we've actually shipped out this shock protection system in the DB28 to pro athletes, including tennis players, and we have yet to destroy the system despite attempting serially to do so. So we know it is as tight as a drum, and this watch can take an absolute beating for something that expensive and fine. But let's say you really want to go fine. You want a dress watch from an horlogerie brand that has exclusivity, independent watchmaking, cool, and perhaps not as much extravagance as this avant-garde thing. Well, de Bethune has a watch for you. Launched in 2014, this is the DB25 Midnight Blue. We have a black polished, fired blue titanium center dial, and it's called black polish because from any angle except its one reflective angle, it turns black. That's why they call it Pali Noir, or black polish. Only this one has the added color of being fired. We have an enamel hour and minute track outboard, so the inner dial is blued titanium, the outer dial is Grand Faux enamel with a lovely Breguet style set of Arabic numerals and its center high contrast rose gold modified Breguets. Attention to detail is superb. Look at the knurled and drilled crown. And then the case, 44 millimeters, but only about 10 millimeters thick with fixed conventional lugs and a solid dial. This is a de Bethune for those who want the company's innovation and exclusivity, but they don't necessarily want something that looks, quote, weird. This is your first de Bethune. It's not the entry-level model. That would be the DB27, but this is for people coming over from Swiss Holy Trinity, from Lange, from independents like FP Journe, Kari Voutilainen, Moritz Grossmann. This is for the traditionalist, and you can see how discreetly branded it is. When you flip it over, you can see all the tech is on the back. So now this is automatic winding with a 6-day reserve. You can see everything that's blue here is fired titanium, albeit in matte. We have a different implementation of the triple pair chute shock protection system, but we also have a sort of, I would call it more rough and rustic finish here with a combination of snailing and media blast. And then there's a shock protection system. The idea was with a titanium rotor and a white gold mass, have a huge lever arm for maximum winding efficiency, but then also protect the ball bearing, because by creating a huge lever arm, you risk it torquing like this. You just want it to rotate. You don't want it to torque. To protect against that kind of motion, 1, 2, 3, 4 shock protection springs are used. This was patented in 2006 to make the winding system as shock resistant as the rest of the watch. And you could see the use of little effectively dry lubricant jewels. So those jewels are there to reduce the friction when the spring comes in contact with the rotor below it. It is beautiful. It is graceful. It has real elegance, a quality that is not always associated with de Bethune watches. Throwing it on my wrist, it wears easily, though at 44 millimeters, it's on the large side. There are 42 and even 40 millimeter DB25s out there. So if you want one of those and you like this, reach out to me again, Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. We own de Bethune. We have a large inventory. We can always help you out if you have a specific request. This is just blazingly beautiful and classically gorgeous. I'm going to do another loom shot and see if you guys can call this one. This is going to be harder than the Octa Sport, so get ready. Okay, what are we looking at other than a watch with a 24-hour dial style? This was launched in 2023, 42 millimeters in rose gold from Patek Philippe, Calatrava travel time 5224R. It has 2 time zones. Unlike previous travel times, like for example the 5524G, the 5134, or the 5034, you can do all of the setting of the time zones using the crown. And because both the travel time and the local time are 24-hour hands moving at the same speed, when you superimpose them, they stay that way and it cleans up the dial. Now you can see we have these hybrid baton syringe hands, applied indices as well as numerals. We have white on blue printing with a record-like or vinyl-like concentric pattern across the center. Hands, indices, numerals, all gold to resist oxidation and tarnish. Beautifully tiered lugs, a nice elegant thin case profile. And on the back, the modern 31.7 millimeter diameter micro rotor caliber 31260 that debuted back in 2011 on the 5235 annual calendar. This is not the 240. The 240 is smaller and older and less capable. This is designed for modern watches. This again has a hacking seconds function, 6-position adjustment, silicone hairspring, free sprung, Patek Philippe seal. Put all those features together, guaranteed to run no worse than -3 + 2 seconds per day from the factory. To maximize the winding efficiency, the micro rotor is made of platinum, not gold, and both the rotor bearing and the reduction wheel bearing are ceramic and unlubricated for high efficiency. All of this with 48 hours of power reserve. The architecture is beautiful. From the winding bridge all the way down to the balance, we have sort of a crescent hollow in which the train wheels and the rotors sit. The stripes are extraordinarily broad, a quality that I really enjoy, giving it a more luminous 3-dimensional look than the narrow stripes. We do have high-quality bevels, which are likely finished manually, although honestly, under $100,000 at Patek, you do expect that they are going to be started mechanically, but the finish is persuasive. We have look under the bridges, we have 1, 2, 3 different sizes of engine turning, black polished screw heads with chamfered slots and circumference. And then, while we do lack interior angles, I would have liked to have seen them here, 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 and here, we do actually have some outward points. If you look at the outer edges of the bridges, you can see where bevels come to a point, and bevels that come to a sharp point are very difficult to finish in their own right. They're not quite on the same level as sharp interior angles, but they're definitely up there as flourishes you want to see on an expensive watch. So lots to love here. We'll throw it on my wrist. It's a big piece. There's no getting around that. This watch at 42 millimeters is on the large side. for a Calatrava. So I really think you need a wrist of my size or larger to get the most out of this, 16 centimeters and up, but being only 10.1 millimeters thick, it will easily slide under a cuff. So a very, very useful dress watch. Automatic, 2 time zones, and plenty of luminescence. This can be a full timer. Wonderful velvety nubuck texture strap, an absolute pleasure in the hand and on the wrist. Finally, my favorite watch of the day, not just the most spectacular, launched in 2021 in steel, the 41 millimeter Moritz Grossmann Tremblage with a dial made of German silver, an alloy of nickel, copper, and zinc. You can see the copper giving it that wonderful champagne hue. The texture, the equivalent of a trembling hand applying a sharp granular finish. Historically, that's what tremblage is. And this rustic look matting the natural shine of the German silver, and no two will be exactly alike. The made in Germany, Moritz Grossmann name, the track for the minutes, the seconds, the Breguet style Arabic numerals, all of these are part of the dial. They are raised and relieved as the material is reduced. And so we have this incredible 3-dimensional tremblage dial, the hands from Moritz Grossmann made in-house, cut, polished, beveled, and fired to create that lovely rich blue and extended, super narrow, almost syringe-like aesthetic. You can see their centers are polished and the head of the canyon pinion mounting the minute hand has been polished. You could see the sophistication of the case, which is about 49 millimeters from lug to lug, and then the way these set is unique. So you can see the seconds hand is in motion. I pull out the crown. Now, when I pull it out, I hack the seconds, so you can see that's stopped. The enormous variable inertia balance, which is made in-house, has stopped. You know that when you pull a crown out, you set the watch precisely, and then you push the crown in, and the minute hand always moves. So what was the point of synchronizing so precisely? Well, when you pull this crown out, it snaps right back in, and then to release the movement and resume timing, you just press this return spring button on the side. And now, without any movement of the minute hand, it resumes keeping time. On the back, Moritz Grossmann caliber 101. Its standout feature, its size. Over 36 millimeters, it fills this case back as its purpose-built for modern large-size watches. 20 stones or jewels. You can see they use clear sapphires rather than synthetic rubies. They use short-fired violet brown screws rather than blued screws. They do use golden chaton cups for individual train jewels. They do freehand engraving just like Longa, but they give you more of it as we have not one but 2 bridges of this type. We have fired screws, but we also have black polished screws, and you could see, even without magnification, the beveling on the edge of that screw, and then the slotting, the beveling of its internal facets. You could see not 1, not 2, but 3 rings of concentric solarization, and the teeth on the ratchet wheel and the crown wheel here, I don't know how well you can see this, but they are micro mirror beveled internally. All of the characters, the numbers, and the letters are freehand engraved on the bridges. And then we have an overcoil hairspring, a black polished micrometric screw fixed adjustment system, which is truly special. Most of the adjustments will be done using the masses on the balance. And again, Moritz Grossmann makes this itself, but very fine adjustment can be used with this proprietary system. You can see that the movement is a pillar movement, so the bridge and the plates held apart by pillars like an old marine chronometer. There's a hollow between the bridge and the plates. Mirrored beveling, extraordinarily broad, though we don't have a lot of it because of the pocket watch style 3/4 bridge. And then we've got an overcoil hairspring, a 42-hour manual wind power reserve, and a beat rate of 18,000 vibrations per hour. Lots and lots to love. This is finish that goes above and beyond Longa. It's a different aesthetic, but qualitatively superior. And Moritz Grossmann only making a few hundred watches a year to Longa's 5,000 to 6,000. If you love this or any watch today, reach out to me. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.